So here we go.
Here we go.
Last of the Packhorse Bagmen. Well, he stormed through the door of the Maori pub, just appeared one day, walked in from the scrub, had a cigarette swag, a raging thirst. Took 3 days before he first spoke a word to any of us. Said he didn't want to cause no fuss. When I heard his name, I knew that he was the last of the Packhorse Bagmen. Lachie McKinnon. Well, I was at the Maori pub in the middle of South Australia. I'd gone there. I was a few songs short for an album, and I thought I'll just go up to Maori and sit down in the pub. And so each morning I'd go down to the bar and have either a coffee or a phlegm cutter, depending on how I felt, and then see who was round at the town and perhaps have a bit of lunch and then a sleep in the afternoon and work on these song ideas at night, sometimes till 3 o'clock. It was great. And I came down one Monday morning and I was just there having a coffee, and in he comes, this bloke. And he chucked his hat down in the corner. He had a little cigarette swag over his shoulder. Took out his tin of tobacco, money, put it on the bar, and he ordered the Bushman special, a rum and a beer chaser, a little pony of beer and a rum. And the barman tried to engage him in conversation. Don't talk to me. He said, I'm not here for toys, I'm here for a drink. And I thought, wow, you're interesting. And he stayed there all day, just him in the bar. There was no one else there. And about 5 o'clock he took his swag and disappeared out in the flat somewhere, and obviously camped. The next morning in he came again. Not a word. Rum and a beer chaser. Smoking, looking straight ahead. And I'm thinking, first one to talk loses here. So on the third morning, back he comes again. And he's there about 10 o'clock, smoke, and not saying a word. And in came a little old Aboriginal couple, husband and wife, and they were beautifully dressed, clean. They were all Johnson's baby oil, gleaming their skin. And they're smiling at one another, and they come in. He sat his wife over in the corner. He went and ordered 2 little Stock and Station Agent beers, a little 5 ounces, and took them to the table, and they clinked glasses. And sitting there, probably reflecting on the fact that 5 or 10 years previously they wouldn't have been allowed in the pub. And they're having a nice little sip, and this bloke's, and I'm watching. And in came 2 local hoons, and they're going to play pool, aren't they? And they're going to swear a lot, and they're going to drink double bundies and coke. And click, click, bang, bang. And one of them spotted that the old man, he had on a beautiful crisp white shirt, black trousers, and he had no socks on, but he was wearing dancing pumps, the old patent leather shoes. And one of these young hoons spotted this, and he says to his mate, said, "Get a load of old Fred Astaire over there, we'll get him to do a rain dance directly." And that was a bit of a laugh. And but they got a bit more aggressive as they drank more rum and cokes, and one of them eventually walked over to this old chap, the old Aboriginal, and he poked him on the chest with his billiard cue, and he said, "Come on, Fred, are you going to do the rain dance or not?" And at that point, the man at the bar turned and he said, "He'd buy and sell you pair of bastards." And I thought, it's time. So I walked from around the bar and I said, "How are you, mate?" He said, "G'day, Ted." So he knew me, and he obviously knew the Aboriginal chap. And I said, "So who are you?" He said, "I'm Lachie McKinnon." And then he and I said together the words, "The last of the Packhorse Bagmen."
That's his photograph there.
That's Lachie McKinnon, the last of the Packhorse Bagmen.
And the Packhorse Bagmen are who, Ted?
Well, the Packhorse Bagmen were mainly men. There were a few wonderful, famous women, but mainly men who rode round the country on quality horses, usually stolen, riding a good sort of a horse and leading 1 or perhaps 2 pack horses with their tools of trade and their belongings in the pack bags. And they would ride into a station and they'd say, "Here I am," and their names were known. And they were invariably blacksmiths or cooks or yard builders or fencers, tank sinkers. In his case, he was a windmill expert, and they were the most sought after of all. And they would ride in, they'd say, "I'm here, I'll work for 3 months on my terms. I'll camp down the flat." And when they were good and ready, they'd say, "I've finished now," and have my cheque, and away they'd go.
And a very important role in Regional Pack Australia.
Yeah, and because they were invariably good hard workers, and they called nobody sir, They were a wonderful part of our outback history. And anyway, Lachie, I'd heard of him, Lachie McKinnon, the last of the Packhorse Bagmen. He said, mate, he said, I'm off to Birdsville. He said, I'm going up there to die. He said, when I've got to carry bloody pliers in my pack bags to cut all the fence wires, he said, time to give it away. He said, I gave me horses to a girl in Alice Springs. He said, I sold my saddles. He said, I'm going up to Birdsville. And so it was, the road was wet and he couldn't go anywhere for about 10 days. So he and I just sat there and talked for the next 10 days. And then he got a lift on the mail truck, on the back of the truck, and I waved him goodbye and off he went to Birdsville. But he didn't, in fact, die at Birdsville. He stayed there for a few years, and Tom Kruse knew him quite well. But he went back to the Territory eventually, and he died at Daly Waters and is buried in Katherine.
So the song came from that encounter?
Well, about 30 years later it came, and it was always on my mind. And again, I was doing an album, and I thought, what can I write? I thought, why not? It's time to do Lachie McKinnon, and it just happened sort of overnight. So how long does it take to write a song? 30 years and 10 minutes. Yeah, Lachie McKinnon, what a man.
He stormed through the door of the Maori pub, just appeared one day, walked in from the scrub, had a cigarette swag and a raging thirst. Took 3 days before he first spoke a word to any of us. Said he didn't want to cause no fuss. When I heard his name, I knew that he was the last of the Packhorse Bagmen. He was the last of the Packhorse Bagmen. When he was young, he was a member of the Ragged 13. He told of the places and the things he'd seen. We spoke of the bloke he might have been, but he'd become a Packhorse Bagman. He'd worked on the big runs way out west, Wayville, Inverway, all the rest. Riding one horse, leading two, but he was giving the game away. He said, I'm hanging up my spurs, and I'm heading out to Birdsville. Sit on the banks of the Diamantina, they can bury me there one day. When I have to carry pliers to cut them fencing wires, the country's getting too civilized, so I'm giving the game away. He was the last of the Packhorse Bagmen. The last of the Packhorse Bagmen. Spent 10 days in the old Maori, and I tell you, mate, it was good to see the Packhorse Bagman spinning these yarns, talking all day and night. Then he hitched a ride on the Birdsville Mail, and here's the end of my little tale. As the big truck lumbered out of sight, he was singing with all his might. I'm hanging up my spurs, and I'm heading out to Birdsville. Sit on the banks of the Diamantina, they can bury me there one day. When I have to carry pliers to cut them fencing wires, the country's getting too civilized, so I'm giving the game away. I'm hanging up my spurs, and I'm heading out to Birdsville. Sit on the banks of the Diamantina, they can bury me there one day. When I have to carry pliers to cut them fencing wires, the country's getting too civilized, so I'm giving the game away. I'm hanging up my spurs, and I'm heading out to Birdsville. Sit on the banks of the Diamantina, they can bury me there one day. When I have to carry pliers to cut them fencing wires, the country's getting too civilized, so I'm giving the game away. Lachie McKinnon, what a man.